projects are delivered by people for people, and actually we need to be better at telling the stories about our projects and the narrative behind them, and making those benefits and disbenefits, being honest about the disbenefits, because we can't just sort of, lie. These things are big and complex and disruptive, and we need to be better at telling the story about what we are gaining.
Hello and welcome to WSP's Positive Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Lucy Siegle. In this series, we explore the ideas, innovations and voices shaping a more sustainable, resilient and future-ready world. Today, we're exploring one of the biggest challenges and opportunities in our sector, delivering major infrastructure projects that deliver meaningful outcomes. Infrastructure is essential for creating jobs, supporting housing and delivering reliable public services, while also helping us respond to a changing world. Beyond boosting the economy, it is key to improving our health service, ensuring energy security and moving towards a low-carbon future. In the summer of 2025, the UK government set out a 10-year UK infrastructure strategy and a pipeline of 780 projects that includes public funding valued at £725 billion. This covers everything from renewing old infrastructure to major projects like the Lower Thames Crossing, High Speed 2 and the Sizewell C nuclear power plant. Delivering these projects swiftly and efficiently is vital to maximise benefits for our communities. However, with less public funding and growing scrutiny of the UK's ability to deliver, we must rethink how we approach major project delivery. Well, to help us explore this topic, two brilliant guests join me with deep experience on both sides of the delivery challenge. Matt Steele, Chief Operating Officer of National Gas, and Kerry Bangle, Major Projects Director from WSP, who leads WSP's Complex Projects Advisory Offer. Welcome to you both.
Thank you very much.
Delighted that you can join us today. Okay, shall I crack on because we've got a lot to talk about. So, infrastructure delivery has always been complex. But what is different now? What's changed in how we approach it today? Kerry, WSP is working on projects like HS2, Sizewell C, Heathrow and East West Rail. What does your experience tell us?
Well, complex is the right word, absolutely. Things have got far more complicated. The world is more interconnected than it ever has been. The government have recognised this by having their mission-based government priorities, which has helped, I think, in terms of delivering the outcomes that the projects are supposed to deliver. But it means that the way that we deliver them is much more complicated because, for example, East West Rail, about the development through the Oxford to Cambridge corridor is far more interconnected than just building a railway. You've got water shortages in East Anglia, the transport implications on the road and rail network, and throw in a theme park at Universal Studios in the mix, and you've got something that's far more complicated than just delivering, a railway through that. So there's housing challenges, which is one of the benefits of it. So I think things are just far more complicated than they've ever been, and I think the public are more literally invested in the outcomes, because after all, they're probably going to be paying for it, either through their bills or through their taxes. And social media has played a great part in enabling us to access, hard to reach communities and groups so that we can engage with them. But equally, there's a lot of, expectation from the media about how the projects are being delivered. And rightly so, these are big sums of money. So we have to be very mindful in the way that we're delivering these complex projects to make sure that they are, doing the job and we're responding to those new challenges.
Wow, you've described so well these very loaded sort of pressures and opportunities as well. But yes, you're right. Gosh, it is complex. Yeah. Matt, let's come to you. You're such an experienced project leader. Where do you see where we are now?
It's really interesting because I was reflecting on your question, and yes, major projects have always been colossally complex, haven't they? Historically, when you look at the ambition, and I think that hasn't changed. But I think what has changed is the backdrop around it. And so I think that projects are competing for funding. In quite an uncertain world where government funding is lower than it perhaps might be. And also the wider economic what's going on in the world makes it more complicated as well. So, for example, one that we talk about a lot is inflation and the impact of inflation and the cost of projects and the ability to estimate the final outturn so that the funders know what they're going to spend makes it complex. And then I go back to Kerry's point. I think that interconnectedness between all of these different projects across the UK, Europe and the world is colossal, and it makes it just that much more complicated.
Yeah, so we're really building up a picture now of all of these different competing priorities, competing interests. Matt, let's stay with you. So energy is one area that is seeing a big investment. So we have growth in nuclear and renewables, an upgrade to our electricity grid, and your own role in renewing the gas network and preparing for hydrogen. Can you tell us a bit more about National Gas and your role as an infrastructure owner in the UK and your long-term major project like Project Union? Absolutely.
So National Gas is a company and an infrastructure owner that not many people know about, yet we all rely upon. So we carry a high pressure gas across the UK. So we have about 7,500 kilometres of pipes carrying gas across the UK to those who need it. So that's whether it's industry, whether it's power stations, and of course domestic users. We actually deliver it to the domestic users via the distribution network, such as Cadent or other suppliers that people may know of. And our network was built about 50 years ago, and it was built really, really well. But after 50 years, it needs some money to be spent on it. It is safe. I should stress that it is safe, but to make sure that it's there for the future. And we do need it for the future for energy security. We do need to spend some money on it. So we're going through the process at the moment of agreeing a funding package with Ofgem for the next few years. And then Project Union, you mentioned, is a fantastically exciting project to actually look at repurposing parts of our network for clean hydrogen. So that means that you're not having to build completely new pipelines. You can actually convert our existing pipelines for hydrogen. And hydrogen is beneficial for industries that can't easily electrify. So it's a clean alternative to natural gas, as an example. So whether that's generating power, heavy industry such as creating cement or manufacturing, etc. So there's a number of uses for it, and it is a fantastic project.
So these are the industries that are sometimes referred to as hard to abate?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Okay, and so is this all running together? So you are concurrently upgrading and building, I guess.
So the first priority is to make sure today's network is reliable for the future. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the near-term focus. And at the moment, we're working through the detailed design with the help of companies like WSP to work through the actual solution in terms of converting our network efficiently for the future.
Very good. Okay, so let's talk now about some of the areas where we have these kind of big opportunities to change things. Where do you think the biggest opportunity for change actually lies? Matt, I'll stay with you.
I look at the need for certainty for funders or whoever's funding the job, whether it be the consumer or some other form of finance. And that need for certainty is so difficult to achieve because so many things are changing in our environment. And so for me, I do think that the time spent scoping and developing projects up front, such that before you contract and before you start building the thing, you've really bottomed out as much of that uncertainty as possible. And that gives you two obvious benefits. One is when will it be delivered and the impact that it'll have on people, but also how much will it cost, which of course is just so important.
Yes. But I think, just if I can come in, the tendency or that urge to get spades in the ground is really hard to resist.
Yeah.
And actually there's an inherent contradiction in that, because you want to get in quickly and start building because of, as you say, political pressures more often than not for public projects. A minister or someone needs to be seen to be making progress, but doing more up front to try and simplify some of the complexities. So I think we've talked about oil and gas being quite different to this, where we met, which is in the rail industry, quite different, where there's a lot of this pre-feed front-end engineering design. I think the oil and gas industry seems to be better at holding back, and I don't know culturally why that is.
Yeah, so my experience was predominantly transport projects where I think they're majoritively government funded and have to go through that political cycle of raising funds. So they have to be seen to be making progress.
Right.
Whereas my perception is that the oil and gas majors, it's their own money. So they think really carefully before they spend these huge investments, and they really spend a lot of time developing that front end engineering process and locking down the scope and the cost before they say, right, let's move on with the project. And when they do, they get on with it.
Yeah, and I wonder if we've, missed, maybe that's something that we should be learning. And your point about, an opportunity is, should we be better at holding our nerve collectively, resisting that temptation to say it's going to be X billion and it's going to come in on this day, which is, obviously what happened in Crossrail. And interestingly, in Crossrail was that there was a 4-year opening window. The work was done. It's between 2018 and 2022. And of course, the politicians and the optimists in all of us, humans by nature, I think we're quite optimistic, it's going to be in 2018. And actually, it was closer to 2022 when it was actually open. But there was an opening window. But we collectively, the infrastructure industry, I suppose, with political kind of, pressure, went for the earlier date. So I think there's probably some cross-sector learning that is not happening as well as it.
And it's something we're trying to do, because as National Gas, we haven't done major projects for some time of this scale. So we are spending a lot of time thinking about how we set up early for these major projects as we go forward. So
this is great. I feel like we're workshopping this. This is
marvellous.
Marvellous. Kerry, let me come back to you. So in terms of your opportunities, and be outside of project delivery if you want. I mean, you did ask about the clarification. Where do you see the sort of change happening and the opportunities?
I mean, I think projects are delivered by people for people. I think sometimes we forget that. I said the other day that in the ivory tower, a lot of us have got keys to the penthouse suite because we're so good at the technical. We're so invested in the detail, and actually we need to be better at telling the stories about our projects and the narrative behind them, and making those benefits and disbenefits, being honest about the disbenefits, because we can't just sort of lie. These things are big and complex and disruptive, and we need to be better at telling the story about what we are gaining. And I think it's quite hard. We focus a lot on loss. I think there's a lot of negative. The press, it can be quite negative. We can be quite negative about the UK's record of delivery. And I think that's unfair, because actually globally projects struggle. But our media kind of whip up, so everyone can give HS2 a good kicking, and everyone says, gosh, Crossrail, that was late. And now nobody cares. It's open. The one thing about infrastructure is nobody ever wants it removed. Once it's in, nobody ever goes, oh, that was a terrible idea, let's get rid of it. Everyone just gets on and uses it. And I think we forget that in the way that we tell the stories about our projects. We focus on loss rather than what's there to be gained. And I think that's a really big opportunity that then, if we're telling better stories, we probably will, we'll probably go on to talk about this, but, we become more attractive as an industry for people to work in. So there's a whole raft of benefits that flow from that. It enables politicians to tell the story better, connect with people. So I think that, for me, would be something.
And those stories don't need to be at a headline level as well. I think something that I really firmly believe in is employing local people to build the projects, because the benefits then you give to the local community, whether it be employment, local business support, and then the benefits that you get as back to being the client or the owner or whatever, means that asset, once you've built it, you've got local people who know how to run it, operate it, and build it going forward. Right. So I think it's so important that you tell the story at the headline level, but also for local people, what's the benefit of this to me in this local vicinity, whether it be jobs or other things.
Particularly if it's disruptive to that community, in the short or the long term, like Sizewell, hugely disruptive in the short term, in the construction of it in Suffolk. Hugely disruptive, but it does provide jobs, and they're investing very heavily in the local supply chain. The sticky pound, so making sure that the money is staying there. They're developing building a college on the coast to make sure that children who live in that area have to get 2 buses to a secondary school. So surprise, surprise, a lot of them drop out because it's such a long way. So if they're building and investing in locally based education, that's a legacy benefit far beyond the power station. I think that does not only win communities over, but it certainly helps to, it's a flip side to the disruption.
I mean, sometimes those kind of things are seen as sweeteners, but do you think they have sort of staying power and they can actually change the narrative?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they have to be authentic. That's the thing, isn't it? And the stories have to be authentic. The people doing it, they have to be authentic. It can't be seen as a sticking plaster or a sop to the locals. It has to be absolutely genuine.
And I can give you examples where it really is authentic. So we're much smaller than Sizewell, for example. We've got a site up in St Fergus in Scotland, which, to be totally frank, is not a pretty site. It's a gas site with processing, etc., etc. But the locals fully support that site because they've seen over the last 30 or 40 years jobs coming and going. And I'm pleased to say the people who worked for the company before me looked after local people and got involved with the local communities. And actually, it's much more than a sweetener. It is just part of the community up there. So obviously, Sizewell's a much bigger scale.
So we're basically talking about collaboration as well. We're starting to talk about community collaboration, which coincidentally is my next question. Explain to me, give me some more examples. What does it really look like in infrastructure delivery? And what does the future of infrastructure delivery look like, Kerry?
Gosh, that's a big one, isn't it? I mean, collaboration is talked about an awful lot. I ran a workshop on Friday. We talked an awful lot about collaboration. I'm doing another one on Wednesday.
Oh, there you are.
But it is really hard to bring about, and it doesn't. You can't just wave a wand and it happens. It's something that has to be there constantly. So it's collaboration within project teams, and that's very difficult on a major project because very often the project teams will be drawn from multiple organisations. And trying to be able to, what I've called, sort of leave the lanyard at the door and actually have best for project decisions is really, really hard because everyone comes with their own baggage and their own agendas and their own commercial incentives. So it's really hard to have that truly collaborative model. I mean, Sizewell is being delivered as an alliance. So there is, the incentives are aligned. But that is that's a huge project. They're not easy to bring about alliances like that on smaller scale projects.
But that's really interesting, actually. Even the term alliance, which I don't think is that commonly used in this context. So is that in the actual structure, or is it just a different word?
No, it's a structure that's actually new and used. Well, it's relatively new, isn't it? I mean, but there's not many examples in the UK of alliancing.
I actually used to work on the At One Alliance, which is where a lot of them started in the water industry. But I think the thing I see with an alliance is it's absolutely critical from the top of the organisation that everybody believes in the same outcome and is incentivised on the same means. And that's really easy to say and hard to achieve because you all work for different companies. And the reality is when the chips are down, will you do the right for the project or will you do the right for your company? I think that's really, really important.
Where does your loyalty lie?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So it is exactly like saying, make sure everybody's absolutely aligned. And then it is making sure that each partner brings its best, not that the other partners drop to the level of others. So I think there's a challenge there to say, look, right, we're going to put our best people in and we're going to make sure that happens. Because occasionally, if you look at some of the major partners, if they're delivering one project all on their own, where are they going to put their best people? So I think there's a challenge there to make sure it's an attractive place to work. You align everybody together. And I do think leadership behaviour is right from the top.
Totally.
Absolutely throughout. As soon as you have a chink in it, trust drops as it goes.
So it sounds like, that facilitating these sort of discussions from the outset, as you do, I mean, that's a very skilled job, Kerry. And what do you expect from the different sort of, so you're dealing with lots of different, you're dealing with suppliers, clients, communities, you're dealing with engineers, you're dealing with lots of different constituents, I guess. So how do you what observations do you have about some of those roles and how you make them work together?
I mean, it's definitely not a one and done. Like you say, you can't just go in at the start, set it all up and then walk away. It's something that requires continuous attention, measurement if you can, but obviously it's quite hard to measure collaboration. The authenticity, leadership is 100% believe in what you've just said. It's so critical, and being authentic as a leader and being able to see that, getting in amongst it, being in and amongst the community that you're working with, and being genuinely available to answer questions. Lanyards at the door is, again, best for project behaviours is really difficult to bring about, so it is leadership, but it's at every level. And personally, I run some quite big projects. I think the thing I'd say is, do the people connect to the mission? Do they connect individually to the outcome? So with the Sizewell is this giant nationally significant infrastructure project. My teams are doing the road design for that project. So we're an adjacent enabling factor for that project. And I think it's quite easy for those individuals in the heat of the pressure and the delivery to forget why they're there and what they're doing. And I do have to remind them that connect yourself to this big mission. We are dealing and helping to deliver low carbon power for 6 million homes. It's, and I think it's easy to disconnect from that. So I think hopefully that if that's not sort of a cheesy message from my team, but I think genuinely need to be reminded that they're doing this grand endeavour.
Yeah, these are the messages that motivate people. Which also brings me very nicely onto my next question. So delivery is not just about process, clearly. It's about designs, governance, but it's also about people, which is, essentially what you're saying, isn't it, really? What kind of skills and capabilities do we need more of at this moment? Matt, I'll come to you.
So, for the first one, I think there is those traditional, let's say, skills out on site, building the projects, because that's not going to disappear overnight. We'd all love to say everything's going to be manufactured off-site and it's going to be done by machines and robots. The reality is we need skilled people to do those jobs, and that might be welding, it might be civils works, it might be electricians, etc. So whatever the industry, that's still required. And the other thing is, as you were saying, the question on the way, I think there's lots of people who can do digital and technology, etc. But I see the person that you really need, or the people that you need, is the people that can interpret that clever technology or AI or whatever into real beneficial out on site, beneficial stuff that makes a difference out on site. And that's something I haven't seen yet. I see lots and lots of technical people, lots of technical companies phoning me up saying, we can do this, we can do that, we can do the other. But how do I make the job out on site safer, quicker, cheaper, whatever? And it's joining that up. And I think the final bit is not to forget to make these projects happen. There's a huge back office with fabulous opportunities for people across the UK that can be done in all sorts of different locations. You don't all have to move off to sort of far-flung places, whether it be project planning, accounting, etc. It's really broad skills that we need. So I think I pretty much said everything. But I do believe that.
How do you get the broad skills? Where do you find them from? Do we need to change the way that you recruit and just reach out to people?
Yeah. So we've spent time with a number of colleges, and there's some fantastic colleges around the country who basically, one comment stuck with me, that people often make their minds up where they're going to go in their careers when they're about 12, 13, and they start to see, they don't know 100%, but they start to see choices, whether it's GCSEs, A-levels, and it's getting in at those early levels such that people make choices that can come into these careers. And we've been running school outreach weeks and days. And it's fabulous to see the word kids is patronising, but young adults, let's call it, coming in and joining us for the day. And it's whether they're joining us with technology or actually just getting out and welding, and doing some hands-on stuff, which they don't always get to do, and just brings them to life. Not necessarily massively academic, but actually out on site, welding pipelines for us is massively skilled job, really, really important. We'll always need it. And if we can get you in, get early, I think that's got to be the first way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I totally echo that, because women in this industry are, there aren't enough of us, and we have a skills shortage. We have a overall number of people. We don't have enough people, never mind with the right skills. So for me, the answer is quite simple. If we can get more young women through the door of whatever these projects are early, we'll be half the way there. And those diversity of voices is obviously so important. We know that the industry is ageing. We're doing a lot within WSP, the 5% Club. WSP are a platinum member, and there are about 1,200 other members, and it's a commitment to 5% of our workforce being in earn and learn positions, so that actually, whilst they're working, they're studying as well. So it's removed some of that pressure for student debt. So it's a really fantastic opportunity, and we're going for 10%. Rather than just sticking at the 5%, we're so impressed by the results. Young people in our organisation just got so much to offer, so enthusiastic. So I love the different ways into the industry that there are now. Whereas a million years ago when I was going through, it was you had to do a degree and that was it. You just went in. Whereas all these different opportunities are I think really helping. So young people, young women in particular. And the range of skills, again, this comes back to the narrative point, but the range of skills that are required, you started to touch on them, but there's, comms, engagement, PR, design, graphic design, these, if we're going to tell our stories better, we need all of these skills to do that. We need environmental folks. There's so much work, archaeologists, all of these other disciplines that come into play on a major project. And bringing them all together, which I guess comes back to the complexity point, but trying to bring all of this stuff together is fascinating. And there should be a role for everyone. Whatever you're interested in, you should be able to find it on a major project.
Yes. And are these long-term skills? Because, sometimes people tend to get the sense it's project to project, but these are skills that you're going to be able to use throughout your working life.
Wholly transferable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just the dream is that you go from one project to the next. And, the archaeologists we've got at Sizewell have been working on East West Rail. They've brought all their skills from HS2. So all of these, one project learns from the other. And that's how we really want it, is we should be learning. We should be all learning organisations and not reinventing the wheel. You hear quite a lot about pop-up projects, don't you? And I think we've probably been a bit inefficient in the way that we've done that as an industry.
Too many pop-up projects.
Yeah, too many pop-up projects that come up. You reinvent the wheel every single time, and I think we probably as an industry need to get a bit better at that. Not doing that is what I mean.
I want to speak to these archaeologists now. I want to know what they're up to.
We've got some fantastic, and a lot of them are young graduates coming on to site. They're getting site experience. Somewhere really interesting. There's genuinely interesting things are being found as well. I mean, I imagine there's probably a lot of days where it's just sort of sitting in a field scraping away, but there's, there are, when you get that big find, it must be so exciting.
Yeah, they like doing that as well. They like sitting in the field
scraping. With a brush.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're so right. I think when you meet younger people who are maybe starting out on their career and they're getting to work, particularly on sort of low carbon projects or some, big thing that's kind of changing the future for everyone for the better, there's nothing like it, is there? And you often meet people who thought they were going to have to work in a different country or in a different context, and they're so excited, especially when it's some maybe in their community or something like that. And that really brings me onto the next question. Our Positive Impact podcast is really about a positive legacy for communities, climate and nature. That's what this is all about. And our guests have recognised the need to mitigate and adapt to climate change and biodiversity loss. What responsibilities do you think these major projects have, Kerry?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, the beauty of a major project is because they are so big, they can test and innovate in a way that you don't have the luxury on smaller projects because of the scale of them and because of the brightness of the people that you bring together. There is a real test bed or a real, petri dish of opportunity to do better things. I think we have to be slightly careful that we don't, in delivering big, particularly, energy projects, by the very nature, if we're delivering a low carbon project, we don't just go, well, job done. I can tick the carbon box because I'm delivering a low carbon project. There's in operation, but there's also through delivery and making sure that we're doing everything that we can to be as, green as possible throughout the delivery of the project, not just at the end of it.
So you don't just rely on investing in the right projects.
No.
You also have to think about the things like how do we decarbonise concrete and all of those elements.
Yeah, and having these long-term projects allows you, particularly someone like another client, National Highways, they've got a long pipeline. So, investing in low carbon concrete, suppliers that, green steel, big firms like that or big client organisations can do that.
And I'm just going back to what you said about, the sort of dematerialisation and making it more, I suppose, like green and lean in the operations. I mean, that must be a whole innovation section itself where you're constantly looking at new ideas, techniques, materials.
Yes, and by the very nature, because these projects, in our minds, we think of them as one-offs. If we have a steady stream of projects going through, we can really work through to make them that much more efficient, so we can manufacture them off-site. And then when it comes to operation, we can reduce the cost and the carbon impact of that as well.
And that goes back to your point at the top, wasn't it, which is certainty.
Yeah.
And now we've got this National Infrastructure Service Transformation Authority, NISTA, the pipeline that's been published, bringing together public and private. We've got the industrial strategy. We can actually start to look at that in a more holistic way. I think that has been lacking. So we should be able to start planning better as a collective, clients and consultants industry together.
I love the way you've tied it all together. You made my job very easy. Thank you. Okay, Matt, Kerry, are you ready for our big positive impact question that we ask every episode? Okay, if you could change just one thing to create a positive impact in how we deliver infrastructure, what would it be and why? Kerry, I'll come to you first.
I think I'd have to go to the narrative, telling our story better, connecting to the people that use the infrastructure that are affected positively and negatively by it, and the young people that we want to bring into the industry. I think we just need to do that a whole heap better. And talking to the politicians, because politics and big projects are sort of unhappy bedfellows. They will always be, they'll always need to be together. And we need to make sure that that's an easier relationship. And I think if we can tell the story better, manage expectations better, then we'll be in a better place.
Do you think you could train them to stop using the phrase, what is it? Is it like shovel ready?
Oh, shovel ready,
Yeah, all of that stuff.
Yeah,
Do you think
absolutely.
you could
We
train
need to
them
try
out of
and
it?
stop them. Yeah, I don't know why everyone's so attracted to being in high-vis. There seems to be a thing, isn't there? Like politicians love going out with a pair of scissors and a hard hat. Maybe we should just...
No more shovel-ready projects.
Yeah. No more. Ban the high-vis photo opportunity. Yeah.
Because it just sets the conditions for hurrying and rushing.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Matt?
So mine's a really hard one. So we touched on it just earlier, is as much certainty in the pipeline as possible. And I'm not saying that from a selfish perspective, as a project delivery person. I think that the benefits of that, is so far, because I think, firstly, the projects that aren't going to happen, no, they're not going to happen. So actually you can spend less time with resources on those that could be allocated elsewhere. And then it means if you can get a cycle of projects running through, all the things that we've talked about, whether it be people and skills, supply chain, materials and efficient design, and whatever the sector as well, I think that would give the best outcome. The caveat I say is I know how challenging that really is, and therefore those of us in project delivery have got to accept that uncertainty and find ways to make sure that we can give that certainty to people who are funding the projects, whether it be the consumer or others, as best we can. So project pipeline is utopia, but in the meantime we need to work as an industry to give that certainty as best as possible.
Brilliant. We don't mind a utopian answer to that. That's also important. We'll get there. Thank you both. That was really, really fascinating. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for on this episode of Positive Impact. A huge thank you again to our guests, Matt Steele and Kerry Bangle, for sharing their insights and experience. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate and share. You can find more information and resources in the episode description. Thanks for listening, and join us again next time as we continue exploring ideas that shape a smarter, greener future. I'm Lucy Siegle, and this is Positive Impact. Goodbye.